It's so hot. It is hot in here. Oh, I'm burning up. We are going to try and attempt to condense a 30-minute original panel into something smaller while providing analysis. I don't know how successfully we'll condense that, but we are going to give it our best shot. What's up, everybody? D-Man back. Welcome to a brand new video, and today we're doing another Godzilla vs. Kong news and updates. There's some comic news. I know I'm in the vast minority here, but I'm actually more excited to get comic news than I am to get things like the trailer for the movie. I don't exactly know why, but I certainly am. I'm more excited to get stuff about this comics. I guess maybe because the movie has the potential to be delayed, whereas the comics are most likely not gonna be. They're gonna be closer to us. But anyways, WonderCon, you can make me eat my own words here. WonderCon of all conventions did an online Comic-Con. I don't know why it's WonderCon but also Comic-Con. I guess they're the same company or something. I don't know. WonderCon, which I never thought would do Godzilla news, I just didn't think there would be any reveals for WonderCon, had new news. There's brand new Godzilla vs. Kong comic book and book related reveals. It's all book related material. And so we're going to be talking about that today and breaking everything down. I'm going to break down the full panel and talk about all of our new insights. Starting out with some general panel notes. The panel featured Greg Keyes, who is the author of the Godzilla King of the Monsters novelization. Figured I'd give him a shout out for that. Keyes mentions how much freedom he had while working on that novelization and how it's something unusual. Sometimes when you do novelizations, it's very strict. This one was not that way. Also, Drew Johnson, the artist who drew Godzilla Aftershock, was on this panel as well. They featured a few of Johnson's sketches of Godzilla throughout this. They're really cool. I like the circle behind him. I don't know. They're really cool drawings. I really like him. I love his art style. And he talks about how Godzilla is this larger than life character and he feels right at home drawing such an iconic character because he has drawn iconic characters in the past. They said he has drawn Wonder Woman and some other characters. So this is nothing too crazy for him. Zid, the artist, I guess that's his name. I know in previous videos I was unsure on it, but that's what they call him here as well. Zid of Skull Island, The Birth of Kong, he was the artist for that, is confirmed to return. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, but he mentions how he was a massive Godzilla fan and how he tried out for Godzilla Awakening back in the day. I would have loved that. I would have loved to see Zid bring to life Godzilla. I'm kind of sad he never got to, or at least he hasn't yet. Zid said although he's a bigger Godzilla fan than he is a Kong fan, he is still hashtag Team Kong all the way. He even dropped the hashtag. Yes! Due to Kong being a much more empathetic character. Meanwhile, on the not quite opposite but different end of the spectrum, interesting, Maria Anello, who is a writer who we'll talk about a little later, is on Team Rodan. She's a Team Rodan supporter. Most of the other guys were Team Godzilla or Team Kong, but there was a few people who was like, yeah, Mothra is great. If I'm not mistaken, Drew Johnson said either Mothra or Scylla is his favorite. Finally, for the normal panel stuff, Jan Jones, who was the head of this little panel, she's also an editor for the Legendary Comics, gave the Godzilla YouTube community a shout out and talked about how much they loved seeing us rant and rave about the Camazotz picture that was posted online a few months ago. That's awesome. I love it. I love it when they mention us. Super narcissistic of me, I suppose, but I love it when I hear these guys give the Godzilla YouTube community a shout out. That always makes my day. Let's talk about that Godzilla prequel comic, because there is a lot to cover. It's pretty exciting stuff. If you guys didn't know, there will be two prequel comics coming out before Godzilla vs. Kong. There is one set entirely with Kong and one that has entirely to do with Godzilla. First up on the panel was the Godzilla comic, so we'll talk about it. We know that it is a new prequel graphic novel to Godzilla vs. Kong featuring Godzilla set after the events of Godzilla King of the Monsters. I'm pretty sure the comic's gonna be in color, but we only have black and white photos at the moment, but we do see quite a bit. We see a black and white photo of Godzilla featuring a kind of new art style. I know it's the same artist who did Aftershock, but it does have a different aesthetic, at least in black and white. We see Godzilla has similar dorsal fins to what he had in King of the Monsters. Don't think those will change. And Godzilla is underwater. He's in the ocean, and it's a very reminiscent shot, in my opinion, of what we see at the end of the 1954 Godzilla movie. It's very reminiscent of that imagery. A secondary photo showing fish all around Godzilla was revealed. This is also cool. It looks like most of this comic, if not all of it, will take place underwater. That's going to be pretty interesting. There's an additional photo of Godzilla swimming, taking notice of a nasty little goblin shark, just showing the massive scale of Godzilla while also showing him coexist with nature. There's also a really cool split picture where it's half white, half black Godzilla. I don't entirely know what's happening here. Looks like one half of Godzilla might be getting electrocuted electrocuted? I can't tell. There are prehistoric images and a different landscape on one side than there are on the other. I suppose it could be showing the duality between the normal world and the Hollow Earth, but in my opinion, this looks like it's showing a Godzilla having a flashback to the past, showing Godzilla's past and present. In the past, he was there with all these prehistoric monsters, and you see the landscape, and in the present, he's in the ocean with bubbles all around him. Just showing how long Godzilla's lived, I suppose? I don't know, and I can't entirely pin this image down. One thing that would lead to this being a past and present Godzilla image is the fact that the dorsal fins do look different on both sides of the image. On one side, they look much more 2014, whereas on the other side, they look more 2019. There's also a different landscape between the two, so it's obviously not one continuous image. The new Godzilla comic was written by Greg Keyes and will be illustrated by Johnson. That's really cool that we're getting these two creative forces in the MonsterVerse to collaborate. Should be really awesome to see what they come up with. Johnson mentions how many kaiju we will see in the story. Specifically, he talks about how we're stuck with Godzilla the whole time. Johnson states that we will see Godzilla in a new way, not like in Aftershock. Not just going to be action scenes, it's going to be a whole new perspective on Godzilla. There will be much more focus on emotions, and he says Godzilla will be doing a lot of acting throughout this story. He'll be a fleshed out character. We will show a Godzilla who is both at peace and under attack. The story, if I didn't mention before, I'll mention now, is entirely told from Godzilla's perspective, which will give us a really interesting look into this. We've never had a story told entirely from Godzilla's perspective the whole way through before, so this could be a cool glimpse into what he does on a day-to-day basis. It'll be an intimate story for Godzilla, so that could be cool. It'll be really personal to him as a character. Johnson talked about how he used Godzilla King of the Monsters as a reference throughout his work on this story. He used images as references, and he talks about how Godzilla's protective instincts seen in Godzilla King of the Monsters will be expanded upon in this story. They will be much more fleshed out and much more clear. He says Godzilla also has an instinctual value system. He's got a certain set of values that he holds to. And he talks about how he drew Scylla at one point in this video, meaning that Scylla will return in this comic. They say that Scylla has a quote scene in this new Godzilla comic, and it's supposed to be really cool. I'm actually surprised I haven't heard anyone else report that at the time of me recording. Of course, this news dropped pretty late, so I'm not going to get this video out the day that it dropped. I'm sure by the time my video comes out, I'll be late to the matter, and this will have been covered. Greg Keyes, on the other hand, said he wants to put lots of mythology into this story, following through on what Michael Dougherty set up. He said he studied lizards in his backyard for inspiration. He tells a pretty cool story there. Go listen to the whole interview if you want to hear it. And then Keyes talks about how Godzilla has a set of priorities that drive him, but he doesn't exactly have a moral code. At one point, it sounds like Godzilla will have to choose between fighting one monster or another, and he's gonna pick the one that is most dangerous to the world. That's the way they make it seem, at the very least. It's pretty vague because we don't have the context. And then they finally state that they want this comic to release in Q4 of 2020, so we can look out for it then. That could be awesome. That will coincide right with the movie's release. Gormoro Island made an interesting discovery that this won't be the first story told from Godzilla's perspective. It will be the first story told entirely from his perspective. Apparently, according to them, I don't know this because I haven't gotten to read it, but I believe them. They're always right. There is a Dark Horse Godzilla comic that features an entire section dedicated to Godzilla's point of view only. So there you go. They drew that interesting parallel. Good stuff. Moving on to the Kong story. This will be a Kong prequel sequel graphic novel. It's still unknown exactly when this will take place. There is speculation that some of it will take place in the 90s, while the rest of it will take place in 2012 or around 2012, just shortly afterward. We know that it will be following up on the events of Skull Island: The Birth of Kong. Of course, that was a story split between two different timelines. I have a feeling this one is going to be as well. Like I said before, Skull Island's The Birth of Kong artist Zid will return for this new Kong comic. I love that. I love that we're getting returning artists for this. It's going to give these comics a really nice visual continuity and make them flow really well together. Zid says when it comes to Camazotz, it was a challenge to try and not recreate anything. He wanted to do something new, and he says there are so many iterations of monsters like Camazotz in the past that it was really difficult to do, but they wanted to create something that evokes pure evil. He also wanted the visuals to be able to tell the story on their own, as most artists want that to be the case. And Zid says he loves Camazotz fan art. He says he thinks some people even do it better than he does. He specifically mentioned ZBrush art. I'm thinking Dope Pope here because I'm pretty sure Dope Pope is the one who released really crazy Camazotz ZBrush art. I might be wrong on that name, but I think he did. But yeah, he said he loves the fan art and says that it's really impressive how close people got to nailing the actual design just based on the one image we had before. Shout out to the writer of this comic, Maria Nello, for being a female. I think that's really cool. We're getting a new perspective on the kaiju genre. There's not a lot of female kaiju content out there. There just isn't. There's not a lot of female writers and directors in the kaiju field, so that's pretty cool. I like seeing that. She was brought on to help bring life to a new female protagonist for this comic. They wanted that character, it sounds like, to be the focal point of the comic, which is interesting. I would have made made Houston Brooks and Aaron Brooks the focal point, but we'll have to wait and see what they do with the story. I'm sure that both the Brookses will be in this story, so I don't know, maybe they're just getting sidelined for now, which I'm okay with, just as long as this new character's awesome. And it sounds like she is, based on the way they talk about her. They say this is going to be a woman with a lot of baggage. She appears, at least from the images we've seen, to have been involved with an aerial dogfight against Camazotz. And Anello says that Camazotz is a super interesting monster because he embodies darkness. He's the embodiment of a nightmare come to life. Kind of reminds me of the really gritty take that some fans have done with Gabra, where they've made Gabra like the Freddy Krueger for kaiju, where he haunts you in your dreams and can kill other kaiju in their sleep. That's a cool idea, and it kind of sounds like Camazotz might do the same. He might infect people's minds like Scarecrow from Batman. The art featured during this section, as you've seen on screen, is pretty cool. There is an image of jets flying around as massive burning wings are seen. It looks very reminiscent of Rodan. Of course, Anello said that Rodan is her favorite kaiju in the Monsterverse. It looks very reminiscent of Rodan, but it's Camazotz. It's actually Camazotz. So this is the military going up against him instead. An image of a large, and it seems that there are some smaller Camazotz are rising from either a volcano Rodan style. Clearly this image, at the very least to me, is a very intentional parallel to Rodan's eruption from King of the Monsters, but it looks like he's either erupting from a volcano or standing on a mountain. There are jets that are crashing and burning in the air, while at the same time there are jets that are doing battle with, like I said, what looks to be smaller Camazotz monsters. The image features our female protagonist waking up from a nightmare. It may be a dream sequence, I can't tell. Maybe Camazotz, like I said, can infect the mind. Maybe he infected the mind of our female protag, or maybe she genuinely lived through a previous dogfight aerial battle with this monster. A new image of a nearly full-grown Kong was shown. It looks like he's pounding his fist or cracking his knuckles. I can't entirely tell what he's doing, but either way, it's kind of a badass stance. Kong dwarfs the helicopters around him. Holy cow. And the mountains too. He's so huge in this image. He dwarfs the helicopters and the mountains. They're clearly playing up the scale of Kong, trying to make Kong look massive so that he can really go up against Godzilla this year. He makes the humans look tiny. You can barely see them from Kong's perspective. That's awesome. You can also see what might be a set of baby Camazotz in the background. I can't entirely tell there. They are flying towards Kong. He either takes notice of the helicopter or he takes notice of the baby Camazotz. I think he takes notice of the flying creatures. But either way, he's really shown off his ripped abs and his gnarly beard. Look at that. Like I said, he appears to take notice of the flying creatures, and then it appears he's going after them, or he's gonna head towards them. There's also a massive dead white tiger in a crater near Kong's feet. That's most likely not an antagonist kaiju. I don't think that's gonna be a bad guy. I think that's gonna be something that was killed by Camazotz, but it also looks like it's been stomped into the ground, so maybe Kong stomped it. I would assume that this tiger is gonna be like 50 to 100 feet tall and 100 to 200 feet long, because this Kong looks huge. We also see Houston Brooks will return. At least I think that's Houston Brooks. Maybe it's Aaron, but it looks like Houston. He gets out of a helicopter next to what appears to be a injured soldier. Then there is an image of Kong down at the bottom that looks very reminiscent of the ending to Kong Skull Island, with Kong walking away from Weaver and Conrad. One last note on all this stuff is that I find it really interesting that Camazotz is missing a horn. I think he's fought Kong in the past, and it sounds like he's not going to win this one. I think Kong is going to take the W there. Moving on to the King Kong picture book. I don't think that the new King Kong picture book that was announced is the same thing as the Godzilla vs. Kong, which there is one, children's book. I think the children's book is separate from the picture book. That would be my guess. The picture book is an entirely female-run project. That's pretty cool as well. You got a female editor, author, and writer. It's written by Kiki Thorpe, I don't know how to say her name, who is a famous children's book author. She said she's really hyped to do this book about Kong. She's excited to explore a softer side of Kong that hasn't been explored much before, and her favorite Monsterverse monster is the Spore Mantis. That's the weirdest answer anyone's ever given. I mean, I get it. It's like a cutesy monster that I could see how a children's book author would get behind, but what the hell? The Spore Mantis is her favorite? No judgment. She can like what she wants to like. This story is in incredibly early development. The fact that they didn't even give it a name, and the fact that they say it's entirely about Kong, makes me think it's different from the other announcement that we got a couple days or weeks ago that was about the new Godzilla and Kong children's book, which we will talk about in a future news and updates. I'm hoping that the new picture books that they're talking about here are a little more intelligent than simply like, oh, look, it's silly King Kong being a goofy cartoon character. I'm hoping that they're a little bit more like the picture books we got for King Kong 2005. I remember trying to read those back when the movie came out. So I hope that they take that approach. I haven't read those in the past, I don't know, 15 years, but if I'm remembering correctly, they weren't the most cutesy books. They were just like, hey, it's King Kong on the island doing and King Kong stuff. It wasn't like watered down. I mean, it was certainly a children's book, but it wasn't like an in-your-face children's book. I don't know. Last thing that they announced was the art of Godzilla vs. Kong. We all knew that was already a thing. I've already pre-ordered it on Amazon. It's open if you want to buy it. There's no images revealed or anything like that, but the art of Godzilla vs. Kong was the last book that they talked about here. They said that the book will feature concept art. Go figure. It will also feature lots of interviews from the cast and crew, as did the other ones, the ones that were done for Kong Skull Island, Godzilla King of the Monsters, and Godzilla 2014. I am unfortunately only in possession of the King of the Monsters one, but it's great. It's really in-depth. It's fantastic. They said this book will give us a peek behind the curtain. We as readers will connect to the crew the same way that people as viewers connect to actors on screen. We'll really get to know them. They said that they interviewed almost every department for this film, so we'll check out production design, we'll check out everything from visual effects to directing to everything. It covers all the bases. And the book will also dive into the conflict of the story beyond just Godzilla and Kong. It will dive into the ideological conflicts as well. And that does it for this one, guys. Like I said, I'm hyped for all this stuff. If you want to check out the original video, go check it out, link down below. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I will see you guys next time for the next one. D-Man out.